So if you've used Hyprland for any given period of time, you will know that it is growing and growing and growing as kind of its own ecosystem. It's got all kinds of cool tools and all kinds of cool functionality and all kinds of stuff you can do with it, and people are building stuff for it day after day, and it's just kind of grown into this monster that I don't know that anybody had any idea it would be. Now, do I like that? I'm still on the fence. I am using Hyprland right now. I do like playing around with Hyprland, but I'm on the fence as to whether I want to continue using it as my full-time desktop. Now, not saying that it's bad or anything like that. It's just not quite, I don't know. I'm not quite sold completely on it yet. But we're going to go over one of the tools today that is actually pretty cool that I found I don't necessarily need, but I know a lot of people are going to like it and going to put it to some use. So what are we talking about? We're talking about a tool called Hyprpm. Now, Hyprpm, if you're interested in knowing what that is, it's basically a plugin manager for the Hyprland ecosystem. I'm going to call it an ecosystem, call it a compositor, call it whatever you want, but it's really kind of growing to be its own whole thing here. So let's go to workspace number 2 here, and you can see I have on this window here, we've got Hyprland Wiki up, and I've got the plugins section up, and using plugins. So basically this page is going to tell you how to use plugins, and we're going to talk about how you get plugins working on Void, because it is a little bit different than just getting them up and running on like Arch or Nix or something like that. So to get them up and running on Void, there is a couple things you have to do. First off, if you haven't done it yet, you're probably like me and running version 0.36, I believe it was, of Hyprland. If you're using the McReynolds Hyprland-Void template that I kind of showcased in my installing Hyprland on Void video. I will say he has updated. You can see he's updated a couple weeks ago. So I ended up having to update to version 0.39, I believe, is what it is, to actually get Hyprpm working. Any versions before that, I believe, do not have Hyprpm on it. So you need to update to at least to the version 0.39, I believe it is. So actually, let's go ahead and take a look real quick. So let's go back to workspace 1. Let's clear the screen and zoom in, and we'll put hyprctl. And then what is it? Info, I think, is what I'm looking for. Let me see here. Sorry, or version. Maybe that's it. Yeah, so we're on 0.39.1. And last I was on 0.39. Or 0.36 point something, I can't remember, but 0.1, I believe. But Hyprpm was not installed on that, so I was unable to get Hyprpm working until I updated. Now, that being said, on Void, to update isn't as simple as on a lot of your other distros. To update on Void, you have to update the Hyprland-Void template on your system and go from there. Now, if you go to his page, again, it's McReynolds, M-A-K-R-E-N-N-E-L, Hyprland Void template. He does have a section down here for updating. However, I found when I attempted to do this, it didn't quite work very well. I couldn't quite get it to take, so basically I just went through kind of like I do every 6 or 8 months or so on my Void source packages and completely cleaned them out. I basically delete the whole setup, and I reclone it, and I rebuild everything, and we go from there. So basically what I did is I deleted all my Void source packages because I just decided I was going to do an update. And now, before you guys jump on me in the comment section, I am aware that you can update your Void source packages other ways than clearing them out completely and recloning and everything like that. But this is how I prefer to do it, so this is how I do it. So basically, I deleted all my Void source packages out. I deleted this template or this source package repo for Hyprland Void. I uninstalled Hyprland. I uninstalled Hyprland Desktop Portal or XDG Desktop Portal Hyprland. I uninstalled everything that comes in these templates. The source package right here. These source packages, the Hypercursor, Hyperidle, Lang, Hyperlang, all this stuff. I deleted all of it from my system, and then I recloned this template, and I basically installed it like it was brand new, and that got me cleaned up and good up on version 0.39.1. And then once I was on version 0.39.1, I just ran the Hyprpm command to check if it was installed, and it was installed and ready to go. Now, the problem I had was when I ran the Hyprpm update command, it would fail when it was trying to find some of the headers. Now, I kind of tinkered around with that for a little bit and found that the actual tool that is part of your core utils that actually helps build packages and look for header files and stuff like that, called package-config, is a little outdated, and it doesn't quite do some of the stuff that it doesn't quite look in the right spots for some of these headers. Now, a lot of distributions, like I believe Fedora and Arch and stuff like that, have already switched away from package-config to package-conf, which is just one word, PKG-CONF. So basically what I did was I didn't uninstall package-config, because when I attempted to do that, it actually told me it was going to break. It wouldn't do it. It refused to. It said it would break dependencies for the core utils. So basically what I did is, let's go over to workspace 1 again, and let's cd into /user/bin. And basically if I ls and I pipe that into grep, and we're going to look for pkg config, you can see right here pkg config, and now we are going to look for pkg comp, and you can see that right here. Well, basically what I did was I moved pkg config and I renamed it to something else. So I didn't completely uninstall it from my system. I didn't delete the binary or anything like that. I just moved it. I made a note on my system as to where I actually moved it to, so I can remember. And then once I moved package-config, I symlinked package conf to package-config. And then when I ran hyprpm update, or hyprpm update-v, then I didn't have any issues. It found all the header files it needed, and everything was hunky-dory. So let's cd back to home. Let's clear the screen, and we're going to run the hyprpm, and we'll give it the -v. Which actually I guess doesn't do anything. It's verbose. It enables logging. I thought that was going to do version, but again, it's not. But basically, this is the Hyprpm, and this is the plugin manager that is installed, like I said, in version 0.39.1. And it gives you all the stuff you need right here. You can notify, help, verbose, force. Those are the flags. These are the options you have. You can add, which is going to install a new plugin repository. You can remove, which is going to remove an already installed plugin. You can enable, which is going to enable a plugin. Disable is going to disable a plugin, obviously. Update is going to check and update all the plugins if they're needed. Reload is going to reload the Hyprpm state, ensure that all enabled plugins are loaded. And list is going to list all installed plugins. So if I run the Hyprpm list, it's going to show me that I have one plugin, Hyperspace. It is enabled, and that is true. Now, do you want to see what Hyperspace is real quick? If I hit the Super Shift Grave key, you can see I have all this up here. This is basically my system, and if I've got stuff open on other windows, that is where it's going. It's showing you that I have so like if I wanted to go to a different workspace, I could just click on that and I would be at that workspace. And then if we do Super Shift Grave again, we come back down and we're off. If I do Super Shift Grave again, you can see that it just moves over, and I can change workspaces for whichever one I want to be on. So let's go back. You can see that moved me to workspace 7. There is a little bit of tinkering. I haven't configured it yet because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't use that. It's not my favorite plugin. I just wanted to install a plugin to see if I could get it working. So let's go ahead and go back to workspace 1 or workspace 2. So now if we come over here to the plugins on the Hyprland wiki, it's going to show you that plugins are written in C++ and will run as part of Hyprland. So for getting plugins are shared, come as shared object or aka.so files. Hyprland does not have any default plugins, so any plugin you may want to use, you will have to find yourself. Installing plugins, it's highly recommended you use Hyprland Plugin Manager, which is Hyprpm, which is the tool we're talking about. For instructions, see the bit below. Hyprpm, these are the required dependencies, CPIO, Mason, and CMake. Find the repository you want to install from. As an example, we use Hyprland plugins, and then you run the command hyprpm add, and then the link to that plugin. Once it finishes, you can run the hyprpm list command, and it will show all the Hyprland plugins that you have installed. Once you have it installed, you then need to run the enable. So hyprpm enable, I'll go over all this on camera so you can watch. And then in order for the plugins to be loaded, Hyprland run hyprpm reload. You can add exec once equals hyprpm reload -n to your Hyprland config to have plugins loaded at startup. The n will make hyprpm send a notification if anything goes wrong. Now this was something I didn't know originally, and I kind of wrestled with it because shame on me for not reading documentation, not RTFMing. But I didn't have this in my Hyprland config, and every time I restarted, my plugins were disabled and turned off, and I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on until I finally came back here like a smart guy and read the manual and found that. So make sure when you add your plugins, you add this exec once hyprpm reload -n. So to update your plugins, you're going to run the hyprpm update command, and for all the options, you're going to run the hyprpm-h command. Now it shows you can do it manually here. I'm not going to go over that because I did not mess with that at all. This is kind of about plugins down here, FAQs about them. How do you make your own plugin and yada yada yada. We're not going to cover that either because I haven't made my own plugin yet. Are plugins safe? As long as you read the source of your plugins and see there's nothing bad going on, they will be safe. Hyprland employs a few tactics to unload plugins that crash. However, those tactics may not always work. In general, as long as the plugin is well designed, it should not affect the stability of Hyprland. Now, you can see where to find plugins here. You can find featured plugins at hyprland.org plugins. So if we right click on that and we open a new tab and we click here, you can see we've got a list of some of the Hyprland plugins that are available. So we have Hy3, which is a sway-like layout. We have Borders++. We have Hyperbars. We have Hypertrails. We have Hypertrails, Hyperbars, Borders++. This is just kind of them broken up. If we go over here to the GitHub page, Hyprland-plugins on Hyprwm, you can see list down here. Borders++ adds 1 or 2 additional borders to Windows. We've got a Vulkan fix for CSGO with Vulkan. We have Hyperbars, which adds title bars. HyperExpo adds an Expo-like workspace overview. Hypertrails adds smooth trails behind moving windows, and HyperWinWrap is a clone of XWinWrap, which allows you to put any app as wallpaper. Then this just gives you kind of some Nix stuff. We're not on Nix, so we're not concerned about that. So the other thing you can do is if we come back over here, you can see you can also see a list at awesome-Hyprland. So if we right click that, and we're going to open that in a new tab, and we are going to actually open that Hyprland community. Awesome Hyprland. You can come down here and see we've got some language bindings. We've got some configuration tools like Treesitter Hyperlang, HyperLS, which is a language server, LSP server. And we've got HyperParse, which is file parser. Now we get to plugins. Now again, down here we have the official plugins, which are Borders++, Hyperbars, Hypertrails, CSGO, Vulkan, HyperWinWrap, and HyperExpo. But up here we have a few more. We have Split Monitor Workspaces, and this is a small Hyprland plugin to provide awesome-like workspace behavior. HyperGrass, which is a touch figure or a touch gestures. HyperInStack, which is an end-stack tiling layout. HyperRiver, which is for layouts for River layouts for HyperFocus. Dwindle Auto Group, Hy3, Hyprland Virtual Desktops, all this stuff. Right here, this Hyperspace, this is the one I have installed. Again, or if I hit Super Shift Grave, that just toggles it down, and then I can toggle it back up. Like HyperSlider, a plugin for sliding window layout inspired by PaperWM. And if you click on some of these, you can kind of see what they are. So let's go with HyperSlider. Well, that's bright. Sorry for blinding you. If we come over here, you can see it kind of gives you an idea of what the plugin does. Just kind of slides the windows off to the side and everything. That's bright. I'm sorry, I'm going to get that out of there. We have Hyperspace, which is the one I have, which again, there is some configuration to do because if you see on the video here, when you click on it and they press the control panel, you can see they've just got the windows that are open. Mine kind of showed all the workspaces. But you got to kind of mess with the configuration, which if you come down here, it shows you all the different things you can use for that. But anyway, on to actually installing a plugin. So let's go back and let's go with, let's see what we want to install. Let's go ahead and install just the main Hyprpm Hyprland plugins. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to go to this page here, and this is going to give us so let's say Hypertrails. So let's open up Hypertrails, and this gives you the command to run right here. So let's go ahead and open a terminal. Let's clear the screen. Let's zoom way in, and what you're going to do is let's do this first. Hyprpm, and and do list, and you can see we've got one plugin, Hyperspace, right? So let's do Hyprpm install, or add, excuse me, and then we're going to run https github.com. Now I could have just copied this and pasted it, but I kind of want to show you what. Then we're going to do Hyprpm, or Hyprwm, excuse me, and then Hyprland-plugins. We're going to hit enter. Now it's going to ask you, you're adding a new plugin repository, and it's going to give you the path, and it says make sure that you trust the authors, do not install random plugins without verifying the code. Do you want to install them? Yes is already highlighted, so we're going to hit yes. It's going to go ahead and clone in. This is going to take a second because it's going to look for all the headers, it's going to look for everything it needs to actually build this, and then we should be on our way. So, excuse me one second. So it's building CSGO Vultr configs. It's you can see what it's doing here. It's hyperbars, hyperexpo, hypertrails, hypertrails, hyperwinwrap. So we're going to get all this stuff built, and sorry, this is going to take a little longer than I expected. So we'll just sit here. I'll try not to let this be awkward silence, but it's just going to be awkward rambling then. Hope you guys are all doing well, and yeah, that's about all I got to say. I don't know. I'm looking forward to building my new laptop. Hopefully that gets here soon, and we can get going on that. In case you weren't following the poll, Vanilla Arch did win the poll over NixOS. So I will be building from scratch my new laptop with Vanilla Arch, and we will have a great system. So there we go. We have installed. Now if we do Hyprpm list and hit enter, now you can see we have all these other plugins added. So we have Borders++, we have CS Vulkan, we have Hyperbars, we have HyperExpo, we have HyperTrails, and we have HyperWinwrap. So which one should we enable? Let's go ahead and enable, let's do HyperTrails. So we'll do Hyprpm enable HyperTrails and hit enter. It is enabled, and then we will do Hyprpm list, and you can see we've got enabled and enabled. Then we'll do Hyprpm-h and hit enter, and you can see we've got add, we've got remove, enable, and disable, update, reload, and list. So now we're going to do Hyprpm reload, and what was the let's go back over here. Let's see here, it was Hyprland PM, or Hyprpm reload, just Hyprpm reload. Okay, and hit enter. Now ensuring plugin load state ensured. So now we have that loaded, and I believe if we move yeah, you can see behind it that little yellow trail now that's following my window around. So that's Hypertrail. So Hypertrail is now enabled. So well, if we want to disable that, we would then run the Hyprpm disable. And now we do Hyprpm reload, and now if we actually move the window around, we can see the trail is gone. So just that easy to actually install the plugins and to enable them. Now if we actually go over to some of these plugins and look at the like if we do HyperTrails and we open that one up here, we can actually come down here and it gives you the bit you can add into your Hyprland config. So you would add plugin, HyperTrails, color, RGBA equals, and then you could change the color of it. So if we actually, let's go to workspace 3 and go ahead and launch, clear the screen, zoom in, we're going to CD into Hyper. Boy, I can't spell today. And hit enter. And we're going to vim into hyprland.conf and hit enter. If we do, you can see I've got plugin Hyperspace down here. So if we clear that, and let's actually go back over here, and you can see we've got plugin. So let's just go ahead and copy that, come back over here, and so if we add plugin HyperTrails and then color, you could probably add could probably do this. So let's try this real quick. I'm not positive, but we're going to give it a shot. Probably just add this right. Oops. I want that one. No, I don't. I want to delete that. And I want to move this there. And let's right. Okay. And then let's actually change the color. Well, let's see. Let's change the color of this too, just so we can tell that there's a difference. So let's change this to yeah, that's good. So let's go ahead and change that. We're going to write. Now let's go ahead and open that. We're going to do Hyprland reload. Oops. Hyprpm reload. Then we'll do Hyprpm list. Not list. So we've got to enable hypertrails, and then we're going to reload, and then we're going to list, and now we've got it. And so now if we reload again real quick, now if we do all, now we move it around, now you can see it went from orange to we now have a red trail. So you can see we just add that into the configuration file. Now you want to see another one. Let's do Hyprpm enable, let's see, Hyperexpo. Hyperexpo is similar to Hyperspace, just slightly different. So let's go ahead and enable Hyperexpo. Let's do Hyprpm reload. Now let's go back over here and go to Workspace 2 and go back out and go to Hyperexpo. Click on that one, and then if we scroll down, we can just run, let's copy this, and we're just going to throw it into our config file real quick at the bottom here. We're going to write, let's go ahead and do, what is this? It's super grave is going to toggle Hyperexpo. So if we do super shift grave, you can see, remember it did that one. But if we do super grave, now you can see it brings them all out onto a grid like. And if we hit super grid again, it takes it back off. So we can go on here and we can select a window we want to bring up. That's weird. Why is that's interesting. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of it. That's how you install plugins on Hyprland on Void Linux. Again, you need to make sure you update to version 0.39.1 to get Hyprpm actually installed on your system. I believe if you find a better way to do it, or you are able to get it on there without doing that, great. But that's what I had to do. So update that, and then go ahead and move your user bin package dot or dash cfg or config package dash config, excuse me, and then install. So sudo xbps dash install pkg conf, and then symlink that user bin pkg conf to user bin pkg dash config. So again, let's go ahead and run through those commands real quick. Let's clear the screen. So you're going to want to update your Hyprland version to version 0.39, and then you are going to want to run the sudo xbps install pkg conf, and then once you do that, again you are going to move /user /bin /pkg config to wherever you want it. I moved mine to another location in user bin. I just renamed it. And then you're going to run ln-sf /user bin pkg conf, and we're going to symlink that to user bin /pkg config. Then once you've got that done, you can go ahead and run Hyprpm update, And if you want to, you can give it the -v, which is going to be a little more verbose. Well, once you run that, you can then start running the Hyprpm add command to actually add repos or add plugins. And then again, you would do Hyprpm enable, the name of the plugin you wanted to enable, and Hyprpm reload to then reload it and make sure the plugin is actually loaded and running, and obviously update your configuration file to however you want that plugin to work, and then run the exec once Hyprpm reload-n command in your hyprland.conf file for your configuration. So that's that. Sorry I rambled so much, and I am sorry my brain is kind of fried lately. It's just been busy lately. So thanks for being patient with me. It's been a long time since I got a video out, but you guys have been stellar at sticking with me. The channel's still continuing to grow, even though I'm not getting too many videos out. I greatly appreciate it, but we're going to see what we can do about that. So keep in touch, keep following along, and hopefully this helps. If you got any questions, by all means, shoot me an email. Let me know in the comments, whatever you need to do. I will do my best to try and help you out. And yeah, so you guys have a great rest of your day, great rest of your evening. Stay safe and God bless.